Hi, everybody. Boy, let me tell you, it's been a long, hot, incredibly wearisome day. But it's always a great pleasure to talk about easier and happier times. And the last video that we posted had some clips taken from some films that were made while I was in the army. And this generated a fair amount of curiosity, and I thought that perhaps I could just respond to some of that. You know, every so often in life, you meet an incredible person who makes such an impression upon you that they can be rightly described as unforgettable. And Stan Hannon was such a man. When I first met him, he was a sergeant in the army, and he had been the manager of the pop group Four Jackson and Jill. And I can't remember the exact occasion when I met Stan, but he seemed to be aware of the fact that I was freelancing as a cameraman. And so he asked me, would I be interested in making an army film? Well, of course. Of course I'd be interested. Who wouldn't be? Now, Stan, it's difficult to find the right words to describe him. He was incredibly hardworking. He was a man of great talent and many fine qualities. And he was a guy who didn't take no for an answer. The possibility that something could not be done just didn't exist in his mind. Extremely optimistic and very positive, and a man with wide horizons. So, this was the sergeant that I met. And let me tell you that he accomplished things way beyond his rank. And I gave up long ago trying to figure out how he did it. I've no idea. For example, he got me called up. Now, there is no sergeant in 5RR, unless he worked in the orderly room and it was part of his job, who could call up another soldier. But there it was, my call-up papers came. And not only that, I was seconded to Army HQ, and Stan had organized that. He organized promotion for me as well. So, as I said, I don't know how he accomplished these things, but he was very persuasive and very articulate. And I'm sure that when he came across a problem that he himself couldn't solve, he would just go up the line until he found somebody that gave him a sympathetic ear and, listened to him and, as it were, did his bidding. So here I am, at Army HQ, about to make a movie. Now, the Army got for all intents and purposes, they're unaware of this. This is just a one-man show. It's Stan's vision, and he's brought me in on it. So all we've got is my long wheelbase Land Rover, open vehicle, no mineproofing on it, my camera equipment, and that's it. And we're going to set out to make a documentary. And Stan's the producer, so he's got some idea about what he wants the movie to be about, but it's all in somewhat vague terms, and you can understand that it would be. I think it's true to say that most documentaries proceed along that basis. Alfred Hitchcock was a great film director, and he said on one occasion that once the script is finished, the movie is complete. So planning is absolutely essential. And with a theatrical film, you can do that kind of thing. With an animated film, there you would plan right down to the last frame. Ideally, you wouldn't even want to paint an extra cell that wasn't going to appear on the screen. So you were working in 1/12 of a second in your planning. But with a documentary, it's different because you don't know You don't know what you're going to find when you're on location. And so you got to adapt. Now the cameraman in these circumstances, in situations, should I say, very often has to be the director as well. So while I'm filming, I got to be listening as well. If we're interviewing somebody, and maybe he fluffs his lines, but we don't want to cut the take. We let him run to the end. So now I've got to think for the editor. He's going to cut out those awkward words, but what's he going to put in place? He can't just cut it because you're going to have a jump cut. So I've got to look around for some insert, some cutaway that I can put in there, or that the editor can avail himself of if he so chooses. So it might just be a fountain nearby, or a bird sitting on a tree, or something appropriate to that setting, which he can cut away to, and it's not going to break the continuity of the film at all. So you've got a lot of stuff going on in your mind that you got to keep thinking about. And yeah, so I got to go and buy the film stock out of my own pocket, and a 400-foot roll of film would be $25 in those days, which was quite something. So I would have to provide the film stock, and Stan would then, sort of put in a claim form with the army, and Major Stannard was the man who would approve this for us. I think he was the camp commandant of KG6 barracks. But he wasn't a difficult man at all, I mean, we got his full support in many ways. I have a pass written by him somewhere in my file. I still have it, authorizing me to travel and stand to any part of the operational area, and asking the people that whoever we present this pass to, that they would give us their full cooperation. So he was a good man. And there was petrol rationing in those days, and the Sergeant Major at KG6, what Sergeant Major doesn't come across as a crusty old guy, but he was a kindly man to me, at any rate, and he would fill up my Land Rover, and I would sign the receipt for the petrol. So we had free fuel at any rate, and so we set off. We've got an old Perfectone tape recorder that we've rented from Central Film Labs, and it's important that you have the right sort of equipment, but this thing was old even in those days. But the beauty of it is that it's got what they call a sync pulse head in it. So the camera that I'm using has got a motor that generates a pulse, and this is recorded on the tape by the tape recorder. So as the speed of the two instruments changes, perhaps, or the tape stretches, but the sync pulse enables everything to stay in perfect harmony. So when you're recording somebody and they're talking, the lip sync doesn't go out. It's so much easier today, isn't it? I mean, I'm sitting here looking at myself as I talk, and I don't have to worry about any of these things. So, and we're off. We stop at Grand Reef, and all I remember about Grand Reef is that the man we spoke to there seemed to be very, very busy, and we'd come at an awkward time. We went to other places as well. I think we were at Buffalo Range, and we travelled with that Land Rover, and more than one army officer came up and said, you guys are mad. You shouldn't be doing this. But we had no choice, we couldn't commandeer a 4.5 or a 2.5 would have been nice. So we had to make do with what we had at that time. And so, we were in Umtali, we did quite a bit of filming there, and eventually we got enough stuff together that Stan felt we could put on a little bit of a show. And he organized it all. As I said, I gave up trying to figure out Stan long ago. All I know is he just said to me, on such and such a day, We're going to be meeting at the Ministry of Information, and we're going to be in their theatre there, and there are going to be some important people come along to see what you've shot. So on the day, I'm I'm feeling pretty nervous, eh? I mean, I might be a freelance camera, but I don't do it for a living, and I'm up against the professionals here, the guys who, they know their stuff, eh? So we gather in this little theatre, and the lights are dimmed, and they've got my film on the projector, and the projectionist runs it. So it's about 10 minutes long, I think, and I'm sitting there, and I'm feeling very, very awkward. So it's over. The lights come on, and there's a brief silence. Then a bearded man stands to his feet, and he looks around the crowd, and he says, "Who's the cameraman?" Mike Hart Jones was his name, a big executive from Rhodesian Television. So I stand hesitantly to my feet, and he says, "Did you do the camera work?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "You on a job?" And that was one of the most wonderful compliments that I'd ever received in my life. And it endeared me to him straight away. And what a relief, and then there was applause, and everybody said, "Well done." And I felt really good. And of course, now we had the support of Ministry of Information, so there was no need for me to go and buy a film stock out of my own pocket anymore. And we had the use of their facilities, and we had the use of Rhodesian Television Services facilities as well. And so it was down in the basement at RTV. They had an editing room, and a lady there by the name of Marion Best. She did the first cut of the film, and I would sit there with her in this basement, and she'd be working on an old ancient Moviola editing machine, and this thing would clatter away there, and she'd have the film looped around her neck as she cut and spliced. And I sat there a couple of days, but I couldn't do that because this film was somewhat of a dynamic project. It didn't seem to want to come to an end. As soon as Stan and I thought, well, now we've got enough, we can put the thing together, we've got it all, something would happen, and we'd be off in the Land Rover, and like that terrible massacre that took place, where Father Myerscough was the only survivor.
We were taken down past the dining room to a point where there's a gap in the hedge. 2 or 3 of the terrorists broke away and went down to the Dominican convent. No undue urgency seemed to possess them. We were not ordered into ranks or anything. We were left standing, loose formation, just standing across the roadway. The 3 standing ahead of us opened fire, and I saw the center gun blazing. I instinctively half turned and fell to the ground. There was one continuous and short burst, and then silence. I lay still. It was probably only for a matter of seconds. And then, as there was dead silence around me, I began to realize that I had not been hit.
Oh, that wasn't very pleasant at all. But it was pleasant meeting the old priest. And, there's been a lot of controversy over that. And maybe I should just take a few moments to say what I know about it, okay? He told Stan and I that he couldn't speak Shona. And he told us that the people that committed this crime were terrorists. Now, the Roman Catholic authorities didn't see it that way. Myerscough, they hid away. But you can't hide anything from Stan Annan. He approached them, and he spoke to them, and he said he wants to speak to Myerscough. And they said, "Why?" And he said, "Because we'd like to interview him. We feel that what he has to say is very pertinent to the Rhodesian War." And they said, in what sense? And Stan said, in the sense that he can clear up this mystery as to who did it. So they said, that has not been established at all. So they weren't going to give their cooperation. It didn't matter. Stan gives me a ring and he says, bring your camera equipment and bring the recorder. We're going to be speaking to Myerscough.
And looking back on it, from the point of view of a missioner, realizing full well that the people perpetrating these horrendous deeds against those who are working for the well-being of the Africans, we were, understandably I think, we were quite stunned. It was so obvious that this was a real communistic attack.
He, by this time, has become so disillusioned with his own denomination that he's applied to become a chaplain in the Rhodesian Army. So Stan and I and Lieutenant Colonel Norman Wood and Father Myerscough, we go out for a meal. General Hickman walks in, he comes across to the table, he greets everybody and he goes off. And then we have a very pleasant evening, and then afterwards Stan says to me, you know, it was very awkward because Colonel Wood had to turn down his application on account of his age. So Myerscough never became a chaplain purely because of his age. Anyway, enough of that. We filmed what we could there, and by this time Marion had been taken off the movie, and a lady by the name of Gretel Hughes carried on, and she continued doing the editing. The opening sequence, that was done by an editor at Ministry of Information, a young guy. I never met him, and I was told his name, but of course I can't remember it. And he just on the spur of the moment, looking through the footage, said, hang on a minute. And he sort of sat there, and I think Stan told me, like within about 10 minutes, half an hour, he rearranged that opening sequence with the shots of the people in Salisbury and the contact images that we had filmed. So, and it was great. It was, when we saw it, I loved it. I thought he had done a very good job. Now, we had quite a fair-sized crew out there in the bush when we filmed that contact sequence. We couldn't do a real contact, it's very difficult, but at least this was under some control. Now, those troopies you saw there, somebody said, was that me? No, it wasn't me. I was behind the camera. They were from the RLI, a 5-man stick that we borrowed. And there was a Lieutenant Blackman that organized this, and he was there with us that day. He was like a liaison officer, but a very, very clever man, a very talented man. I hope I'm not mistaken here, but as far as I know, he's the man that designed the RLI troopie. Well, he was there. He brought along somebody from the engineers who laid the charges in the sand to simulate the AK fire. And we had 2 Africans who were going to play the parts of gooks. And we had our sound man there, Frank van der Linde. Stan was there, of course, and I was doing the direction and the camera work. Now, I've got to tell you, when you see those guys walking and they're looking around like that, they're not entirely acting, because we're in the operational area. And I mean, there could be gooks within 50 meters of us. We get to the end of the shooting and we load everything up on the truck. Now, if I'm not mistaken, as far as I remember from 5RR. We weren't allowed to really move around with one truck unless there were some exceptional circumstances. You know, it had to be 2 trucks. So, but we'd gone out there in 1 truck. So everything was loaded on this truck, and now we set off back for the main drag between Motoko and Salisbury. And we cross over that very river, but it's a quagmire of mud. And the truck chonas. Well, when we say chona, it means that it sinks down onto its chassis and the wheels can't grip, and it's just well and truly stuck. So there we are. Now what do we do? And we need to get help. So, you know, I offered to go back to Salisbury and come back with assistance. So I leave my camera and everything, grab my webbing and the rifle. I'm not walking back along that road that we had come on, that's for sure. I mean, these guys, if there's any gooks in the area, they would have been listening to the gunfire. They may have been watching us from afar. They may have seen, well, oh, this is great. These guys are making a movie. We'll give them something to think about when they come back along this road. So Stan comes with me, and I set off through the bush. And eventually I hit the tar road, and we wait there, and somebody comes along and very kindly gives us a lift. So we travel to Salisbury. Stan excuses himself because it was late already in the day and he had a prior appointment, so we said our goodbyes, and I walk the short distance that's left over to Army HQ. Now, the way you see those guys on the movie with the short pants, t-shirts and all the rest of it, that's how I'm dressed, eh? I mean, I didn't expect that I would end up at some point during the day at Army HQ. But, you know, there's the army and there's the army, eh? And when you're at the headquarters, yeah, people don't walk around like that. I mean, they're almost like they've just come off the parade. So I stand at the door. There's a long corridor. I need to get to the Sergeant Major who deals with the transport and tell him what's going on. But I'm too scared to walk into that building on account of the way that I'm dressed. But you know, I had the presence of mind to take my cap off. I thought, well, that'll at least take some of the complication away, I think. So I set off down the corridor, and you know, it's busy. It's late afternoon, and people are wrapping up, and you know, coming out of the offices and going into another office, and they got files under their arms and that, and they all stand aside and watch me as I come past, and I really felt very self-conscious, and I thought, why am I feeling like that? I'm a soldier and I'm in the HQ of the army. But man, I looked to them as though I was something from a foreign planet somewhere. But the Sergeant Major was good, eh? He jumped into action straight away. He said, look, as soon as he heard what had happened, he said, I'm going to organize an escort to go back with you, and you can take a 7.5. Now, you know the Unimog, we called it the 2.5, and then we had the bigger Mercedes truck, which was, you know, the 4.5. But the 7.5, whoa, that's the mother of them all, eh? That's a big truck. And this one had apparatus at the back for, like a crane, you know, it could lift a vehicle out of the ground, off the ground. So when all of this is assembled, the 2 vehicles, we set off, and I'm in the 7.5 so that I can tell the driver where to go. We get there to the river, and the other guys are so impatient now. They want to go. The sound man, the chap from the engineers, and Lieutenant Blackman. So they all pile on the escort truck and they say goodbye. Because, you know, everybody knows, you leave the RLI there, you know, they can stand guard while this truck is being, you know, pulled out of the mud, and then they can be vehicle guards on the way back to Salisbury. And the 7.5 can't budge this truck, eh? It's stuck, it can't move. So the decision is made in the end, just abandon it. And which we did. I believe They pulled it out a few days later with a helicopter. I don't know how. I would have loved to have seen that. But they managed to pick up the rear end of it, I believe, pulled that out of the mud, swung it to one side. Yeah, helicopter's a strong thing, eh? Anyway, so now we set off back. It's night time. It's late at night. And it's cold. Let me tell you, it's freezing cold. So the RLI guys are sitting almost with their backs to the cab, and we're traveling along. And I'm sitting facing them, and I see they're looking at me. And it's bitterly cold. But I've got my patrol jacket open, and I'm sitting there, cool as anything. I'm more than cool, I'm frozen. But I won't show it, eh? Not a chance. So one of them says to me, "Aren't you cold?" I said, "Nah, it's not cold. Are you cold?" And I hear a few swear words come back my way. I thought, no, I'll show you guys. You might be RLI, but I'm 5RR and I'm double rugged. I'm not double rugged. Just a good actor. So yeah, that's what I remember about that particular day. So eventually the movie is finished, and the premiere, is scheduled, and this takes place at Shell House one evening. Right on the top floor, there's a beautiful theatre, and we all arrive there, formally dressed, and to come and see this movie. And I don't know who all these people are, but there are certainly a lot of important people there. And when the movie is over, there's snacks and eats, and everybody stands around talking and, being introduced to each other. And I think it was at that occasion, that evening, that PK van der Bijl approached Stan, and he said, "Listen, I want a color version. Can you start on it straight away?" And so, although this black and white film was finished, we then started almost immediately on the color version. But whereas the first one had credits at the end of the movie, because it was just an army film, supposed to be. This next one was supposed to be an independent Dutch production, and it was codenamed Springboard, and we had a meeting beforehand. And I think as part of the cover-up, so to speak, I wouldn't be using my Bolex equipment because, although it was very good equipment, it was really semi-professional. And so now I had an Arriflex, an Arri BL camera, beautiful camera, and that was almost available to me for my exclusive use. And so I had that for a few months that I carted around. And the old Perfect Tone stayed at Central Film Lab. We now had a sound recordist dedicated to this film, Valerie Dunn, and she had a Nagra tape recorder, state of the art, and so we had good stuff. And to help, we had Harmon Cusack, excellent guy, good cameraman, and so we had a very strong team. And when that film was finished, I think Lynn Memel was instrumental in the distribution of that movie in America. So yeah, that's the story of those two films. For a while, it was of some amusement to me, in a manner of speaking, to read of the speculation that people had as to the origin of these films, because especially the color one, it was made as a secret operation, and so people weren't exactly sure. There's no credits on there, so you can't really find out much by just looking at the movie. And I remember on one occasion reading that they had pinpointed the man who had made the film to a certain individual in America because it had all the sort of trademarks of his work. And that worthy gentleman just kept quiet. And I mentioned this to Stan. So he said, no, don't worry, I've taken these two films and I've had them registered somewhere. So they, you know, there's the history is fully documented. Yeah, those were good days, you know. And I, you know, if I might show you, here is a roll of film dating back to those days. Eastman Plus X negative, black and white film, and this is what the first version was made out of. You can see there's a sort of a yellow seal there, supplied by Kodak in Salisbury. If the tape is attached like this, then I know that it's been exposed. If the tape is along the edge, you know that it's, you can put it in the camera. It hasn't been used yet. So that was the first film. I love this Plus X negative, very good film, and the color version was made with Eastman color negative 7247, also a very popular and well-known film back in the days. I have my exposure meter still, a beautiful instrument, cost me the earth at the time, and it's known as a Luna 6, still in beautiful condition. You know, it seems a shame that things like this become outdated. Beautiful instrument, and it has an attachment that goes on it like that, and you can focus through this. And the makers of this exposure meter, and I've done this, tell you that you can actually focus, pinpoint a spot on the moon and measure the light there through this, and you'll get an accurate reading. Luna 6, very good exposure meter, and I still have it. Yeah, it's traveled many miles through the operational area with me. And then, you know, when you're doing documentaries, as I said earlier on, things aren't always under your control. But on one occasion, Stan said to me, we're going to be doing a studio shoot with Brigadier McIntyre. So we arrived there, and I had this beautiful tripod with a Miller head on it, you know, Miller hydraulic head, and I fitted the Arri BL on it, and there we were in the studio, and you know, all the lighting is professional. Well done was there, and so we're ready to go. And the Brigadier comes, we ask him to sit down in front of a curtain as a backdrop, and we're ready to go. And then it's up to me as the director, and so I'm able to say, lights, and the lights come on. Sound, Val gets her tape recorder going, and she calls out, speed. Camera, I start the camera. Mark it, and Stan comes out with this very bored 23 or whatever it is, 23, take one, action.
Southern Africa is very important economically to the whole world. It is also strategically important in a military sense. And we have seen the gradual move of communism down Africa, and they don't intend to stop in Rhodesia.
Why, I'm as good as Cecil B. DeMille. Yeah, that was great making movies. Eh? You know, this is, I mean, this is such a lovely device. I still use it. You know, if I have a separate recorder and I'm not using the facility on the camcorder, I will still use it in order to establish the sync mark. So yeah, old technology, but still relevant today. Of course, you don't see that because I cut that out. So, folks, I don't know if if I could go on much further than this. I do want to say that recently I received from a friend of the channel a video, stop motion, that he's produced, and he's intending to do a series of early Rhodesian movies. We're going to put a link at the bottom of the movie, so you know, please do support him. Take a look; it's well worthwhile, and thank you very much for all that, friends. Yeah, thank you for all your comments. I love it when you all get involved like that. You know, I learn so much from those comments, and you know, sometimes I just don't have the opportunity to get back and to talk about it. Yeah, you know, all I can say again, just in closing, is that you know it was a privilege and an honor for me to meet Stan Annan, a great man, and you know, without him, those two films would not have been made, and I think our history would have been the poorer for it. So Stan, my man, thank you, brother, and God bless you, eh? You keep well, and the Lord bless all of you too, eh? All the best for now. Cheers.